there was this discussion about should we try to bring in progressives and what, try to capturing the progressives. Like no progressives are going to be enamored with this pick or anything.
Right. No one's going to be excited by a Kamala Harris pick. There might be a few people who are excited about Kamala Harris, but this is mostly about not alienating, the people who the Biden campaign is clearly catering to, which is the upper middle class suburbs and the people who, the sort of moderates, the former Republicans who the Democratic Party is catering to right now. We saw, John Kasich being selected as a speaking spot for the DNC.
And that's kind of weird. I guess they're just trying to put out whatever they can to pick up any possible votes along the way. So if you have, Republican voters who may not want to be voting, they kind of hesitant to vote for Trump, I guess you give them a little bit of a, throw a rope out there, see if you can reel those people in. But it's just kind of a, it's a ticket that makes sense for someone named, Basement Biden, who's just kind of hanging out and trying to not make waves. And already, even today, within minutes or hours or whatever, Trump was up there saying stuff. He's talking about Kamala Harris being the furthest left Democrat in the Senate. I mean, all this stuff coming out that just doesn't make a lot of sense, but, it doesn't have to with Trump. He just throws it out there, and some people are going to pick it up and see if they can.
Yeah, we saw an ad run literally, like, I think it was within minutes of the announcement of Kamala Harris. An ad was immediately running about how Kamala Harris is part of the far left, how they're hitting Kamala Harris for her signing on to the Medicare for All deal, saying that she's part of the far left. So it just plays again into that Trump strategy, which they're trying to do, of painting Joe Biden as A, incompetent, but B, also just a vessel for the far left. The Trojan horse ad, we all saw how, Joe Biden is just a Trojan horse that everybody that in the far left, the supposed far left, the supposed progressives out there, that they're the ones who are inside trying to hijack Joe Biden. And what's so interesting about this is there was that stop for a minute there when they stopped and they were like, okay, we need to reassess our ads. We need to reassess our campaign. We need to reassess everything because clearly whatever, something isn't working. Something isn't going right. We're not doing well in the polls. We need to change things up. And then they came back out with the exact same strategy that they had been running anyway, that they had been running still.
Right.
Look, I'm not here saying that Donald Trump, at this point, he's so far down that he could, I'm not saying that there's a ton of stuff that he can actually do in order to win at this point. But there's definitely better strategies that he could run if he wanted to do a little bit better than what he's doing right now. But the strategy that they're most comfortable with, because it's the strategy that Republican strategists have been running with for decades now, which is just criticize the Democrats, call them socialists no matter what they do, and then now they're tailjacking on the fact that Bernie Sanders actually calls himself a socialist.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think part of it with the Trump type ads is I just it's like what's the saying? A tiger can't change its stripes. I think he literally can't be something else other than who he is. So I feel like they're kind of locked into one way of running a campaign because that's all he knows. That's all he's able to do is that true Trump self, which is going to be to go out and tell what are essential. Well, they just are lies and things that aren't true, but immediately throwing that stuff out there. I mean, the people, and it shows what sort of an echo chamber all these political groups are in, where it's like, Trump's sitting there telling them that she's so far left that she's basically going to defund the military and do all these things. She just voted the other day to decrease the military budget, right? And he's up there saying she's going to defund your military.
Right, and that was one of the votes that actually really pissed me off because the thing about that vote was it was a 10% cut, Now, to someone who may not be super plugged in, 10% definitely sounds like a lot. But when you really start digging into the numbers, you actually realize 10% was not even close to enough because 10% would have set it back to where it was under Obama. So basically, just bringing us back to the pre-Trump days. It wouldn't have even been a real pullback of the military, but even that, of course, was way too radical, way too far for these senators in Congress. And Kamala Harris couldn't vote for it.
I was just going to say, especially since we've supposedly are kind of ramping down these forever wars, kind of makes sense you could maybe put a little bit less money into the military budget, if we're not all out fighting these wars anymore. It seems like it's reasonable, but they just kind of stay at those levels. They only ever go up. They don't ever come back down,
Exactly.
right?
And the crazy thing about this is, we can talk all day, all day long. All day long we can sit and talk about how, we're going to end imperialism, how we're going to stop, sending troops out overseas. But at the end of the day, if you're not willing to cut the military budget, then that stuff isn't actually going to happen. Because you can't just talk about running a president who opposes, intervention, et cetera, et cetera. You also have to talk about rooting out the institutional incentives to invade other countries. Because
Right.
there are institutional incentives where certain people can make a lot of money from invading certain countries. And so we have to talk quite seriously about rooting out those incentives. Part of that is cuts to the military budget. Part of that is cuts to contractor funding. The way that, contractors are contracted out by the government. Some of that money is straight from the defense budget. Some of that comes from other sources. Like, those are the places that you need to cut out if you want to talk about ending imperialism. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there who will run talking about how, oh, well, we need to get out of, Donald Trump especially, but Democrats do it too, don't get me wrong. Run around talking about how, well, we need to get out overseas, we need to stop this, we need to stop that. And generally, by the way, guys, that's pretty popular. Most people agree, well, yeah, we don't need to have our troops everywhere overseas. Like, that's a pretty popular sentiment. But then you tie that and say, well, we need to cut our military budget. Suddenly, that's a problem.
Right.
Suddenly, people, start getting quite skeptical there. But, like, we need to be realistic. If we want to end imperialism, that's the stuff that we need to take. Those are the actions that we need to do.
Yeah, and when it's a choice between paying for that kind of stuff and then maybe fixing up schools in this country, maybe sending people to college and making it not quite as expensive, maybe making it so that when people need health care, they can get the health care, all these things that we supposedly can't afford in this country. Well, maybe we could start to afford at least a portion of those if we're a little less imperialistic.
Exactly. Let's spend our money here at home, and let's spend our money on investments to really help people develop and succeed in life, not just to try to line the pockets of a few rich people.